Loud.
And Eva, can you call on Mark first for the first question?
Yes, I will.
He always gets me fired up, so we'll have him go first.
I'll see what I can do.
All right.
Eva,
So
are you
Bridget-
ready for me to go out of practice session to start
Yes.
webinar? Okay.
Yes, please. Can you tell if people are joining, Bridget?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Coming up on 30.
Welcome, everyone, and we'll start in a few minutes once we get some more of the participants online. Okay, welcome everyone to the Midwest District PRSA webinar on the intersect of PR and AI. My name is Eva Kaiser. I'm the immediate past president of the Midwest District, and I have the pleasure of hosting this great panel discussion. For me, it's been a topic that's come to mind a lot, particularly because I have clients in the technology industry who use AI. And so I was very kind of concerned when there's all this chatter in the media about AI and how crazy it is. And even the president was like, hey, it's going to impact PR. So I was like, hey, let's talk about why and how it's going to impact PR. So we brought together this great panel of individuals. And I'm not going to go through their introductions and their bios because we'll be here the entire time. But first, it's Matt Darling, Vice President of Sales from Muck Rack. Matt, if you want to raise your hand, say hi. Okay.
Hi, great to be here. Thank you.
And then it's Chris Harihar, partner with Crenshaw Communications. And if I butchered your name, I'm sorry, but
that was right about. That was
close.
Enough, Eva. Thanks so much. Excited to be here.
Okay. And then Hyejin Kim. She's an assistant professor from DePaul University.
Thank you for introduction. Excited to be here as well.
And then my longtime friend, Mark McLennan, APR fellow PRSA, he's general manager of CNC in Boston. Hey, Mark.
Good to see you again, Eva.
And then Michael Smart, CEO of Michael Smart PR.
Hi, Eva. Hi, everybody in the Midwest. Thanks for having us.
So how today is going to work is we're going to go through some questions that the group came up with to kind of touch on the many areas of AI and PR. And then we'll be doing questions at the end through the Q&A feature of Zoom. So if you have any questions you want us to address, please put it in the Q&A section. We'll also have some brief demos. If we go past one, please stay on, or you can drop off and you can see the recording afterwards. So welcome everybody, and let's get started. The first question goes to Mark. What is the current state and sentiment of using AI in public relations today?
Thanks, Eva. I think it's an interesting question. And what it comes down to is I think we're oscillating back and forth between tech utopianism and tech dystopianism every day, and possibly 10 times within the day. And we're really figuring out what's the day, what's the tech, what are we hearing about? The key takeaway for me, though, is this is not a flash in the pan. This is not something people can ignore or say, I'm not comfortable with. It is as fundamentally transformative as the telegraph, the web, and the rise of social media. And you also, just like what we're doing, you can't stop learning about it. New tools are coming out daily. There are changes daily. When the PR Council, we unveiled the Code of Ethical Guidelines for AI, that morning, there was a significant change from ChatGPT, which made us change our guidelines. So I think the key thing here is working to figure it out. This is just like the rise in the mid-90s, when people were starting to use social media and they're working to figure out things. Like we were learning how to program in HTML, and we had to realize that putting 20 flashing banners on a website really wasn't a good idea. It seemed kind of cool because we could do it. But you got to really learn, we got to experiment and try. But the one kind of guiding principle I keep in mind is just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. And you need to figure out what you're comfortable doing, how it's going to aid your company, and how it's going to aid your clients.
Thank you. Mike, what do you think?
Hey, thank you. I signed up for this panel because Mark was on it. He's the most qualified person in the world to talk about the ethics of AI, with all of the incredible work he's done promoting PR ethics. I'll echo what he said and give a little bit more detail. So Matt's team at Muck Rack they do a great annual state of PR study. This year, they drilled down into adoption of AI and released that separately as a state of AI in PR. They, along with another study by We Code Word and Annenberg School at USC, found that about 60% of PR pros are either using generative AI or say that they want to. And my experience is the other 40%, I'm going to throw something up on the screen share. The other 40% have seen some horror stories like this one. Are you guys seeing my newsletter now?
Not yet.
Okay, I didn't hit the right button on the share. There we go. Okay. Now, how's that?
Good.
Okay, so they've seen some horror stories like Conrad, who's a reporter, that says, if you pitch me a poem, I'll block you and file a complaint with the BBB. And this PR pro clearly used ChatGPT to write this poem, where before November of 2022, it might have been like, whoa, this guy took the time to read my stuff and write a poem about me. Maybe I'll read the rest of his pitch. And now it's just clear that he let the computer do his work. So that 40% have seen these horror stories and said, oh, I don't want to go there. Maybe they've heard the Ph.D. from Google say that AI has the same threat to humanity as nukes and pandemics. And then those PR pros are just saying, I'm out. Understand the emotions that are driving. I understand the emotions that are driving that. That said, the other 40% of PR pros are in somewhere on the following continuum. They might be just using it for research, right? It can't hurt if you're the only person that ever sees the output. In doing that, I just spent this morning building a campaign for a client, asking ChatGPT to help me identify the best audiences, the channels that they use to receive communication, what they might find interesting about the campaign. And then a step that I should have been doing, but I just didn't in the past, I asked it, what are the things that this audience would feel skeptical about for this campaign? Then I asked it to take a shot at three main messages for each of the audiences. Others in this 40% who are experimenting with AI mostly are using ChatGPT, as I mentioned. They'll take a well-written press release that they wrote themselves, drop it into the tool and ask it to generate 10 possible headlines. The same with a well-written, originally written media pitch, right? So not AI didn't write the pitch, but they dropped the pitch in, asked it for 10 possible subject lines. And then these pros are not just taking the initial output, they're using the tool as if it's the smartest intern you've ever had. And they're coaching it and saying, no, those subject lines are too clickbaity. Give me more substance first. Now drop them down to 6 words. No, now expand it out to 15 words. And that it's the best intern ever because it never complains and you don't have to pay it more than $20 a month. I think I'll stop there and kick it back to you, Eva.
Okay. Does anyone else in the panel want to share their thoughts on the state and sentiment of using AI in public relations?
I would just say that, I think there are people who don't believe in this technology and aren't embracing it. To them, I say, good luck. You'll be left behind attempting to preserve things that need not be preserved. I think that the technology is fundamentally transformative for the PR agency, for the PR industry. We use it quite a bit at Crenshaw. Everybody on our team has a paid account. I use it probably 40 times a day. It's a technology that absolutely should be championed in every organization, and we've really made that clear at Crenshaw. And I've talked quite a bit about the value that I think it brings to any team and any PR practitioner on a day-to-day basis. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity to use it. We're just sort of scratching the surface. What's really fascinating is today is the best and worst we'll ever see of these services. And so they're only going to get better over time. And to think about that is really fascinating because, I think it opens up a lot of doors. But I think that, anybody who's not looking at adopting this technology is simply not going to be able to succeed moving forward, because other agencies are, other practitioners are, and they are seeing the benefits and they're winning more business as a result of it. They're making clients happier as a result of it. They're driving more coverage as a result. Their lives are easier, more, they're seeing a streamlining of onerous work and processes that, things that previously took hours to do, they can now do in an hour or less, which has material benefit to your life in general. So I think for a whole host of reasons, this technology is here to stay. It's only going to become more ingrained in organizations and in the PR industry. And, we'll look forward to seeing that happen because it's made my life significantly easier in a number of ways, or at least optimize aspects of my life. I don't know if my life's easier, but certain things are easier.
Thanks, Chris. So we already sort of talked about ethics a little bit already in this discussion, but what ethical decisions need to be understood by the media rooms and PR departments before deciding if AI is right for them? When is AI and PR right to use? And we'll start with Hyejin for her response on that.
Thanks, Eva. This is really important question. So AI can be applied to a wide spectrum of PR processes, from research to strategy development and execution and content generation. But in this session, I want to focus on the content generation part. So in classroom, I encourage students to use AI to enhance their creative abilities, like idea generation or brainstorming. But the nature of AI itself really involves multiple ethical concerns, and it's crucial to be aware of them when adopting the AI-generated outputs. So first, in the classroom, I emphasize the importance of fact-checking on the AI outputs. So eventually, AI is a well-trained machine based on the billions of text and images from unknown sources. So if you so the AI gives you information collected and then integrated from unknown sources, but AI itself doesn't really know whether it's true or false. So fact checking must be done before adopting the AI generated outputs. And also we should be aware of the potential biases, because if the large language model was trained on the existing data set that reflect stereotypes or biases, then the output itself could perpetuate the existing biases presented in the data. So we must review the outputs first before adopting them, and then we need to intervene if necessary. And also, I teach students to be transparent with the use of AI. Because it drives from previously curated text and images from unknown sources. So the AI outputs could potentially involve some plagiarism or reliability issues. And the training data may have contained some private or personal information and even copyrighted materials, but we don't know. So AI outputs can be helpful, but the outcome should be properly cited. And then, and I believe that the APA and the MLA citation styles are working on the guidelines.
Thank you. So Mark, you've been cited as the ethics expert here. What are your thoughts on this? Does it change every day? And
well,
where
the
are we
good
at?
news is that part really doesn't. And Michael is being way too generous in what he says. And there's been so many people that have been looking at this issue from an ethical point of view. But that's kind of the key thing I'll say is you need to have a code of ethics. You need to follow it. The PRSA has their code, which gives you guidance for AI. I know the Board of Ethics and Professional Standards for PRSA is currently developing more specific guidelines. But back in February, the PR Council approached me and asked me to help co-lead an effort. And we brought together 17 agency owners, DEI executives, technologists, ethicists to really hammer out guidelines for the ethical use of AI. You know, one thing you said, and so you can go, it's free on the PR Council website. I would challenge you when you asked if AI is right for them. To me, that's like asking if oxygen is right for you. You're going to be using AI. Everybody is using it, whether you want to or not. It's going to be added into the services that you're using. But that being said, just like Hyejin mentioned, you need to make sure you're being transparent in how you're using it and disclosing how you're using it. You absolutely have to be aware of the biases that AI is interpreting. And there's a number of questions that the PR Council recommends we ask vendors to better understand what biases they may be bringing in. And it's not just lying. There are significant IP issues with generative AI. And I like to talk about generative AI and not ChatGPT because it really is much more than just ChatGPT. IP issues in terms of integrating it into the written content, but if you're using it for generative AI for graphical and visual content, there's a whole bunch more. And frankly, there's no legal case law right now giving clear guidelines, and you don't want to be the first one that's sued for this because it's going to be more expensive for you to do it. You need to look at protecting the integrity of client information. You know, many of these databases will eventually, not immediately, but eventually go and use the data you put in, the queries that Michael Smart puts in, the 40 things that Chris does every day, and use it to get better. So there's a chance that a paid analyst report, you know, some other paid research, which should be confidential, gets put out there. You need to respect autonomy and authenticity. And, you know, it's also one of the things that I think people have been seeing and where there have been issues with AI is you need to make sure you're not using it as a replacement for diverse experiences, insight, or engagement. You know, asking AI what are the top issues for the Latino audience instead of actually engaging that audience. There's some significant issues ethically there. And I think we saw there was one company, Charmaine Nameless, that said, you know what? I want to make our website, the clothes in the website have models that look more like the people that come to our website. So they used AI to create a diverse range of models, thin, fat, big, black, Latino, you name it, Asian, instead of actually hiring diverse models. And so there got to be an issue there where they're actually getting less diverse when they were saying they were trying to promote diversity. But in the end, you know, the guidelines that the PR Council has, that PRSA is coming out with, the key thing you need to keep in mind is do what you, your agency, and your company are comfortable with. And it doesn't mean don't explore, but you know, with C+C, I generated, help lead the PR Council's guidelines. There's a few things PR Council says are good to do that as an agency, we decided we don't want to do for different reasons. And so develop it for your own firm, your own level there, but have the guidelines, because if you don't, somebody's going to make a mistake and that's going to be costly.
Thanks. So Michael, do you have any more to add to that?
Yeah,
you've already
I
shared?
gave Dr. Kim and Mark a heads up that I was going to take kind of an aggressive approach to the ethics discussion. Obviously, everything they said is really substantive and deep and has merit. I worry that somebody who hasn't dove into this deeply yet hears those concerns and those warnings and may decide to say, I'm out for the next year until all the dust settles. And I think that would cost you and your clients and your employers. There are ways that you can continue to develop your understanding and practice without risking some of those ethical violations. For example, both Dr. Kim and Mark cited the ownership, the IP around images. And Adobe's already announced Firefly and released it to most people. Everybody else will get it in the next quarter. And that's the generative AI for images, where they already hold the rights to every image in their training data. So they can confidently say, you have the rights to use this. It's not somebody else's. Mark acknowledged that generative AI is a lot more than ChatGPT. I'm always going to talk about ChatGPT just because my experience is that's what a vast majority of the PR pros who are using generative AI are using. And think about it. It's the fastest growing product in history. OpenAI knows that everybody is using it. And what's the number one concern we all have? What happens to our data that we put in? So they already rolled out an option where you can turn off the chat history. That means the data that you put in does not get used to train the tool. The downside is you don't get the great chat history on the side, so you can't go back to your old chats. But that they're closing that loop in other ways. Microsoft's already building enterprise solutions for generative AI, where let's say you're a Fortune 500 bank. The only way that the tool will use the data that you input is to make it smarter for everybody else at your bank. It won't go to anybody else. And then as far as transparency, this one's trickier, where I totally get about the importance of disclosure. At the same time, we've been ghostwriting copy for our principals for decades, right? We don't say when we submit a contributed article, actually, the CO didn't write this, I wrote it for him. Journalists kind of implicitly understand that. I even think audiences implicitly understand that, at least with politicians. Everybody knows they have speechwriters. I mean, Obama's was famous for being able to channel his boss, and that was viewed as a good thing. So the fact that a computer can channel us is now a bad thing. I get that that's where it is right now, but I think that the journalists and the public will get used to that, just like they've gotten used to the idea of us ghostwriting copy.
I would say that I don't think that I think there's a lot of sensitivity to providing journalists ghostwritten copy. That is an area fraught with potential harm. In that I think it could jeopardize relationships with media if you do provide them with ghostwritten copy and then it's revealed.
Chris, are you saying ghostwritten by a human or ghostwritten by?
Forgive me. I mean ghostwritten from a chat assistant.
Yeah.
Like
So to clarify, my recommendation is don't do it with the AI now, but just don't freak out that maybe very soon people will become as accustomed to that as they are with us humans ghostwriting copy for other humans.
And I think your point about disclosures is really fascinating because it is it's so fascinating to think about this work. The first thing that a PR person might do when they're like trying to understand how to write a press release on a topic, especially if it's on a topic that they haven't written before, what do? They go look for 8 other press releases on the same topic and they use that as a basis to begin their own press release. Or, sometimes if you're a senior PR person, you're working on something and you give it to a person, lower on the totem pole to work on, and then you share it with a client. You're not disclosing all the people that touched that piece of content before it got to the client. It's fascinating because I think that there's hypersensitivity around disclosures with clients on certain projects that require ChatGPT, and that area is up for debate entirely.
And just building on that, Chris, I mean, then there's a lot of discussion. You're right. That's one of the things I think agencies and companies need to come up with what their comfort level is. On our end, what we're doing and all agencies have done is we may have a disclosure form in our contract that talks about we may be using this boom and it's covered. And so people are aware of it. understand the risks and it's the elements there. Sometimes you may just tell your client, hey, I'm going to use it for brainstorming and creativity, whatever else the case may be. You don't need to do it every single time. But right now, with some of these issues, it's ethically right and legally it protects you as an agency person. Cover yourself. Make sure you're fine on those.
Great. I'm excited about all the things I can do with AI. As a single independent practitioner, I would love to automate as much stuff as I can because it makes my life simpler, as Chris was saying. And Chris, you've done 40 things today already with chat, from pitching stories to writing news releases, to using it for analytics. What are the primary and alternative ways you see companies leveraging AI right now and in the future? Yeah. And we'll start with Matt because Matt's been left out so far in the conversation.
Well, thank you for bringing me in. I appreciate it. But there are much better people to speak about ethics and some of those other topics than I was. But I can certainly talk about some of the applications that we're already seeing. And later on, I'll highlight one of the ways that we've brought AI specifically through ChatGPT into Muck Rack. But we're having a lot of conversations with agencies and with in-house PR folks about how they're already using these tools. And I'm using it every day as well. There's lots of applications for really any profession, and our teams internally at Muck Rack use it for things like research and content generation and brainstorming. And there's some kind of out of the box ways that we've started to think about using it too. And one of the things that there've been some folks who've touched on this in ways before too, but kind of scenario planning and almost simulation planning. So you can almost program through your prompt and the output's only as good as the input, but you can tell it, be a disinterested prospect. We've done that on the sales team for some role playing and some scenario planning, but in public relations, you could program crisis scenarios, drop in a terrible tweet or a product recall or some type of scandal and map out the way a team would respond to that. And that's something you could go on for multiple exchanges, but it provides a level of almost wargaming that before would have taken a tremendous amount of preparation. And now you can just kind of get into it. So a lot of what we were talking about, kind of idea to outline to copy, the brainstorm assistant, that's all there. That's all very powerful. But there's a lot of unique edge case ways that will only continue to develop, but other things that we're discovering day by day here.
Great. So Chris, what are some of the 40 things you've done today with chat?
That's before 11 a.m. No, but we broadly speaking, and I'll talk about ChatGPT as well, because that's really primarily how we use ChatGPT at Crenshaw. The ethics conversation is fascinating because we haven't really touched AI for image generation, et cetera, because there are so many concerns and question marks regarding who owns what and what the conversations around IP ownership. But so in thinking about ChatGPT, broadly speaking, we employ it really in two main areas. First, there's writing. So we harness the power of ChatGPT to really, I would say, bolster and expedite the overall writing process. And then we also use it for ideation. Whenever we hit a roadblock with a concept or we've been staring at it for too long, you have a client sometimes for 10 years, and you're trying to think of new ideas. We turn to ChatGPT to generate fresh perspectives and thinking. If I sort of double click on those buckets and look back at the writing piece, it's, we use it for press release writing. We've made it mandatory actually at Crenshaw, which this might be shocking to some people, but we've made it mandatory for all initial drafts of press releases to be developed with the assistance of ChatGPT. We generally just find that it provides more unified structure, higher quality of work by doing it. And press release writing is so overly transactional and formulaic that there's a lot of benefit for bringing it over to chat. So that's press release writing one. We also use it for copy editing. It's been instrumental in copy editing across the board, ensuring grammatical accuracy, stylistic suggestions, again, uniformity with writing, because sometimes you're going to have 5 to 10 people touching a piece of content within an agency. We also use it for pitch support, not writing pitches, but condensing pitches, translating really complex ideas in a layman's terms, emailing, brainstorming effective subject lines, I think is really important, helps us in that regard. We also use it for plan support. It's a vital tool we found for fleshing out pitch angles for a plan, we have the structure we want to follow, and ChatGPT can help us make sure that we're mimicking that structure across all of the angles that we might include in a plan. We also use it for data analysis. We do a lot of survey and research work in our agency, and I'll get a raw data file with just responses, percentages, etc. I will literally copy and paste it into ChatGPT and ask it to write up the responses, in order from the largest percentage to the lowest. And I can do that across, 30, 60 questions, and super helpful. What else we use it? Awards and conference submissions. And we use it for very basic client memos. Clients might want a memo on media training, want a memo on, monitoring for a crisis or something like that. Just generic memos and template memos. We've used ChatGPT quite a bit for that. On the ideation side, we use it when you reach a creative impasse. We use it for fresh ideas and perspectives when we've been staring at an idea or angle too long. And we also use it to bridge the gap between two concepts that aren't always quite there. We know there's a narrative thread that connects them, and we're trying to get there and we're close, but we need help. And so sometimes using ChatGPT, I think, has been really valuable in those instances. And there are a whole host of other ways I feel like I can explain how we use it, both in the writing and the ideation side. But I think that gives you just a good set, a good basic understanding of how we might leverage it at Crenshaw.
Chris, follow up on standardizing the use for press release writing. Do you feel like that's the benefits that you've seen so far are in efficiency, so people can produce more, and or effectiveness? The quality is better as well.
It's a great question. I would say both.
Wow.
Honestly, we've generally found that from an efficiency perspective, sometimes the biggest hurdle with writing a press release is just starting to write it and beginning that process. With ChatGPT, you could get a very good press release. Honestly, a very good press release, maybe 70 to 80% of the way there, if you provide a good prompt, within 30 seconds. Whereas before it could take multiple hours. And then we also found in effectiveness, we found stronger writing ultimately by using ChatGPT. Press release writing is often done from, with mid-level talent, junior level talent to some degree, even though these, press releases are for major announcements that require a lot of thought. The writing often sort of moves down that totem pole. And generally speaking, we found that that the folks that work on our releases find a lot of benefit in using the tool, and that they develop stronger copy as a result. And it's more unified. Now I don't have different versions of writing between one account executive and a senior account executive. We're seeing more uniformity, which allows for easier editing and copy editing and all around just providing feedback. And so on both fronts, whether it's efficiency and effectiveness, we found it to be super useful. I think press releases are one of the most boring forms of work that we do in this business. Very transactional, very formulaic. By the time that the client edits it, it doesn't look like it should anyway. It's 10 marketing people have touched it and butchered the story, and now it's just a whole bunch of jargon. And so, keeping in mind all of that, we've just found tremendous value in bringing it all to ChatGPT. Honestly, my thinking is if the PR industry brings most of the press release writing to ChatGPT, it will free us up to do so much more high value work for clients that I think it will have transformational impact on the sector.
Eva, could I make a quick point and kick it back to you? Chris is putting in practice a concept that I have in my head, that using ChatGPT is good for what I call commodity content, not as good for premium content. So commodity content, you notice Chris used words like transactional, formulaic, sort of something that's we're doing because it's required rather than the lift that it gives to the campaign. Those are all great use cases for ChatGPT. Do you notice how he said, he said not for pitches? Pitches are very personalized and they require a higher level of expertise. So something that's commodity content is you're writing to a general audience. So all you have to do is advance their understanding 10% and they think you know what you're talking about. But if you're writing to a specific audience, especially journalists who cover a given beat, you have to have a much higher understanding, not the average, like regress to the mean that ChatGPT is programmed to do.
100%. The areas where we don't use it for writing are bylined articles, guest articles,
Mhm.
and long and messaging actually. And so just a heads up in terms of long form content, generally speaking, it's more sophisticated, requires more in-depth knowledge about the space. And that's an area where I think there's more ethical sensitivity from a variety of angles, whether it's like for, considering how journalists might perceive something or even how the client might perceive something. I think, we keep that in mind when we're, and don't use it for longer form content. That's not to say I can't, stick a messaging document into ChatGPT and ask it to create a Q&A for me based off of the messaging, but creating messaging from scratch, I would not ask it. I would not use it for that.
So I'm going to go off the script here of our questions and do a little follow-up, and kind of a fast action follow-up here for all of you. So I teach a writing course at the University of Minnesota, and one of the main things I teach is how to write a news release. Do you think, each of you, do you think that because news releases is our commodity and chat can do it so well, do you think we'll ever get away from teaching how to write a news release in the future? Is that going to be a fundamental skill that we want our young professionals to know? Mark, what do you think? You teach too, so.
I do. I mean, I think just like anything else, it's going to evolve. The point where I kind of push back a little bit is when you're saying it's transactional. It's transactional if you make it transactional. And I think there are some, like a personnel announcement. Yeah, I mean, come on, it's just there. But when you look at great releases, when you look at things, I was checking up on that one, the one with Philly, I think it was, where they were doing some really funky things. Oatly launching the plant-based cream cheese in Philly. Just Google that, look it up. That was a creative press release. Stuff that Adam Ritchie does is creative. I mean, there's ways you can push it and not make it transactional. But it's something we definitely need to continue to, how folks understand the concepts of behind writing a release are useful.
Hyejin,
what's the information? What do you need to share? Boom.
Yeah, so Hyejin, you teach too. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I agree with Mark. So AI is efficient and effective, but like for now, I don't think it can like replace a human creativity. So we might be able to actively integrate the AI into the writing class, but still there are core concepts and the skills we need to learn. So I actually like the math calculator references. So AI is here to stay. So we should be able to integrate it into our current teaching the approaches, but it will not like eventually replace what we need to learn.
Okay. So as a follow-up to that one, to the group as well, fast fire, what do you think the top 5 skills that peer professionals need to have as it relates to technology and understanding AI? What skills do you think that they need to be learning in college, or that people like myself need to learn to be able to use it right now? Go ahead, Mike.
Short term, to Dr. Kim's point, students need to learn not how to be good writers, but how to recognize good writing. So we need to be able to show them 8 press releases, and they need to be able to pick out the one that they should use and explain why. We need to be able to show them the same 8 for a different use case, and they need to be able to pick out the different one that they should use for that reason and explain why. I think that might be harder to do than actually teach writing, right? And it requires us as instructors and managers and leaders to be able to articulate things that we've come to know intuitively through 15, 20 years of experience. I think the industry will be the better for that. Another skill, you hinted at this, Eva, is creative storytelling. So Mark brought up the Oatly plant-based cream cheese. I scribbled that down. I love that stuff. I love finding those out and asking, how did they come up with that? Like, how can I reverse engineer that process so I can come up with an angle like that? The angle will be all that differentiates us, right? In a year, we're all using the same. I think I predict that the Muck Racks of the world are going to give us these great specialized AI tools that we answer a few questions and they'll spit out great press releases. So the efficiency and the clarity of the press release will be commoditized. The way that we'll stand out and people will hire us is for our ability to come up with creative angles.
So Matt, since they brought up Muck Rack, your thoughts on this topic?
I think one of the things that we'll see as a pivot or an evolution is less the nuts and bolts of executing and more how to effectively prompt something like ChatGPT or other AIs. There's a lot of nuance to creating the perfect prompt and having the right back and forth to get to where you want to go. And that can be done in a very rudimentary way with less impressive results, or you can produce something pretty exceptional if you're asking the right questions or framing that in the right way. So I think prompt generation is one of the skills that we're going to have to start teaching.
Okay. Does anybody else want to add to this skills question?
No, I think writing prompts and understanding how to write prompts will be critical for folks to learn in order to be successful in this space. But I do think that is tied to understanding what makes for a good press release. So it goes back to the conversation you were having earlier about, will press release writing class go away? I don't know that that will be the case, because I think ultimately you have to understand what makes a good press release in order for you to use a tool like ChatGPT to deliver a good press release. But I do think that we're going to see, we will likely see more courses or more education around how to build a robust prompt, to use ChatGPT and other services like that. We've done several sessions like that here at Crenshaw, where we will literally walk through, multiple prompts and how to develop prompts to ensure that you put forward the best, ask, so you get the best outcome. But, I think I've just largely just echoed what other folks have said.
Okay. So with this, we are going to have a small demo that Matt's going to pull up, and then just as a reminder, we'll go through the demo and then we'll follow up with the Q&A questions. So if you have questions of things you haven't heard responses to, put those in the Q&A. I myself have written down 2, so we'll definitely have a discussion after the demo. So with that, I'll give it to Matt for the demo.
Thank you, Eva. And I will start sharing my screen. We'll dive right into PressPal, which is Muck Rack's first purely AI iteration here. We've been incorporating AI into the platform in different ways in the past, but this is explicitly AI forward. And we use the ChatGPT API for this. This is available. You can go to presspal.ai. It's available for free. You just have to create a free Muck Rack account to be able to access it. And this is a brainstorming tool. It's a press release generation brainstorming platform where that prompt can be up to 100 characters. It can also be very short. So we'll run through a couple of quick examples here, and then I'm going to make sure we have plenty of time for Q&A. But that can be as general or as specific as you'd like it to be. And then there's a few things that happen in the background that we'll talk about. So I saw a headline this morning when I was reading a business newsletter that Taco Bell is launching some vegan items. So we'll use that here as an example. And if we want to be, we'll use the general example first. So we'll just say that Taco Bell launches vegan items. And this is going to think for a second. We'll send that prompt to ChatGPT, pull that back. And then a few things happen as it writes this. It's going to generate the content for us. It will also extract keywords both from my prompt and the content that it generates. And you'll see those here on the bottom. So we've got Taco Bell, veganism, fast food, plant-based diets. And it runs that against our journalist database, keyword searching against articles that have been written, bios and titles, other information that we have, and will populate 5 journalists that the system believes, based on those keywords, would be suitable for a pitch on this topic. You can go in and see more details about each of those people and also the full results based on those keywords. But here in about 15 seconds, we have a press release about Taco Bell launching vegan items. It's called out a black bean crunch wrap supreme. It can be much more specific than that too. If I know I'm the person responsible for this at Taco Bell, and I know that the focus is going to be on plant-based cheese and sour cream.
Matt, sorry to interrupt your flow, but this is free, right?
This is free.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So this can be used by anyone. You don't have to have paid Muck Rack access to be able to experiment with this. So I'll adjust this with a few additional details. We'll generate again And so this is iterative in that, you can add more detail. You can start very broadly if you just want to kind of be at the idea phase, but that will also impact the journalists. So some are similar, especially if these are people that are big Taco Bell fans. But as we get more specific, you'll be able to drill into more specific search results as well. And what is not free is the next step here that's available to paid Muck Rack users, where I can click this view full list button. We won't spend too much time here, but I'll show this very quickly. And this pulls out the full journalist results based on the keywords that have been identified.
Matt, how long has this service been available?
This has been available now for about 3 months. So we wanted to be quick to market with a version of an AI tool in Muck Rack. We've been using things like natural language processing for sentiment and some other AI elements for a while, but this is the first purely AI tool. So it's been around for about 3 months, and we are continuing to think about ways to incorporate this more.
Are you seeing more volume and outreach to journalists because you have this tool? Is it sort of creating, because it makes it so much easier to now create a piece of content that you can then leverage within Muck Rack to reach out to people? I wonder if you see any sort of correlation.
That's a great question, and I promise everyone that wasn't planted, but it is a great question. We have seen an increase in our personalized pitch volume out of Muck Rack, and something that we caution on the PressPal page, and we also have as best practices, is to then tailor that messaging to your audience. So here's journalists that cover Taco Bell that have talked about the topics in the past that might make them good candidates for a pitch on these new menu items, but it's still important to go through here, do the research, see what they've written recently, personalize that outreach, but it does make it a lot faster to connect the dots and to then pull that through to a pitch.
Yeah, and here's where it's not a planted question, because that might be great for Muck Rack and PR people, but might not be great for reporters, assuming that the research isn't there. So hopefully the research is there when folks do the outreach.
And that's a great point as well. And that's kind of our next. So we've got dual tracks going internally, and I'll stop sharing here quickly. But we've got dual tracks going where we are working to continue to develop AI tools for the platform and for our paid subscribers. But we are also working on a suite of tools that we'll make available to journalists at no cost, in the way that we've made their profiles and some other tools available to help with, in some cases, filtering pitches or understanding what they want to act on, but also research tools and other things that we've seen through our partnerships with some of the journalist agencies and associations.
Thank you so much. I'm excited. I have a news release I need to write, so I think I'll be going in there after this afternoon. But we had a question that came up from the Q&A, and it kind of ties with one of the questions that I had, and it's where should someone start? I mean, let's say they're just like, okay, I am convinced I need to jump into and use AI into my program, my plans, my campaigns. Where do I start? Where's the toe in the water kind of point? And I'll ask the whole group for this.
I'm preparing a training for newbies Tuesday, and as I've looked in the psychology of technology adoption, I'll give some tips based on not just the ease of use, but also it dramatically lowers the likelihood of messing up. So the best place to start is OpenAI, chat.openai.com gives you the free version of ChatGPT 3.5. And just take an existing piece of content that you trust and ask the tool to turn it into something different. For example, you take your news release, drop it in, draft 3 different LinkedIn posts about this news release. You'll see that they're pretty good. Then give it a little bit more context. Say, do one LinkedIn post that's aimed at HR professionals and do another one that's aimed at developers. And then you can see how effective it is or it isn't at that. Once you get comfortable with the compression, then pay the $20 a month to go to ChatGPT 4. It's totally worth it. It's removed a lot of the hallucinations that you've heard about, some of the horror stories, and then you can push it a little bit further. I'm interested what the other panelists have to say.
Such a good point, Michael. The Chat 4 is well worth the money and a significant step up over 3.5. And so certainly, pay for an account if you're considering using it. But I agree. I think ChatGPT is probably the best place to start. I would look at the personal assistant bucket, and that's kind of how I'm describing ChatGPT and Bard. Those are the tools that I think have the lowest barrier to entry. Also, copy-focused tools like Copy AI and Jasper AI exist. Those are other tools that are easy to use that you can look at and consider adopting. The image-focused tools, there are different barriers to entry on that front. DALL-E is easy to use, but honestly, the imagery is terrible. Midjourney is, offers top-tier AI-generated image results, but the barrier to entry there is you have to, use Discord and go through all these other steps that most PR people are not willing to do, or in some cases just don't have the knowledge to do, which is totally fine. And then there's Stable Diffusion. I think that's Dream Studio. That would probably be used by bigger agencies. So personal assistants, ChatGPT, Bard, those are really good places to start.
And I mean, I think building on that, I agree. ChatGPT, I think, is the easiest. And I'd say when you upgrade, what's really got me excited about ChatGPT is right now the APIs and some of the interesting tie-ins they're doing. And the one I can't wait to get out of alpha because I don't have access to it is the code tool, which is going to really give you big data analysis capabilities. And what I'm seeing sounds cool. Until I can try it, I can't tell you about it. It's only for the alpha users, and I'm only a beta user. But yeah, I think Midjourney, you can lose a weekend once you get on Discord. And if you have a teenager, they're on Discord, so you can just borrow their account. You will lose a weekend having fun creating amazing artwork. Two other things to highlight. One I've been liking and playing with a little bit is GoCharlie.ai, which has got some interesting things where I'll put in podcasts that I've recorded and had it write me a blog post. It's been pretty good and give me 20 suggested tweets with right hashtags. And it does it. I added a half-an-hour podcast in there. And it gave me the output in about 90 seconds. And if you want to really, the thing we haven't talked about is the big concerns about how we're going to have to, as PR professionals, defend against AI. And look at what's going on with misinformation and disinformation. And I think that's the biggest challenge for graduates coming forward. And, just go to 11 Labs and play with our audio disinformation tool. I think it's $1 for a month thing, where I was showing my boss how to do this. I uploaded a recording I had of him from one of our conference calls we did, and it could mimic his voice and make him say whatever he wanted to do. And I had him say how great the New England Patriots were when he's on in Seattle, and his partner couldn't tell the difference. That's the stuff where somebody puts the CEO saying something in a negative light, and we're going to have to defend against it and prove that it's not real. There's a whole other issue there that needs to be part of crisis planning, and you want to be familiar with some of those tools as well.
Great.
Sorry
Thank
to get
you.
all depressing.
That's okay. So there was a question about Michael's course on Tuesday. What I will do is when I send out a link afterwards with the link to the video of this webinar, I'll also include information from Michael about how to register for his course or
I
find out
just
more
don't want to get expectations up, Eva. That's closed. That's just for my
Okay.
Inner Circle membership group. But I'd be happy to send you the link to my newsletter that's free that people can check out.
Thank you. So one of the other questions we had on the Q&A is about prompts. You talked about how you don't know how to start a news release. I get challenged with what do I do for my prompts? So what's your advice on creating effective writing prompts for AI? And are there resources that people recommend that have inspired different prompt methods for them?
Yeah, I'd love to jump in on this one if that's okay. I think success in using ChatGPT, again, I'm speaking about ChatGPT. I know that there are other services beyond that, but its success in using it is really in the prompts you develop and you feed to it for response. I think a couple of tips to keep in mind. I think you need to be strategic about the prompts. Bear in mind, you wouldn't want to exhaust your 25 message limit, for example, within an hour. You're capped with GPT-4. I think you also want exhaustive, and this is the most important thing, exhaustive and comprehensive prompts that are thorough to really drive maximum benefit from the service. A prompt like write a press release on X just isn't sufficiently detailed to get what you need. More information is always better. I have a running prompt document that literally has all of the prompts that I've been using in ChatGPT. I create them in Google Docs, and then when I feel like I'm ready to use the prompt, I then bring it over to ChatGPT, and the prompts are robust. They will say, consider this press release, and then I'll feed an entire press release that has messaging and language around a client. And then I'll say, based off of that press release, plus this additional information about an announcement that I'm working on, develop a brief media alert that includes a quote from the client, a quote from a partner, mentions Facebook, mentions TikTok, and all the other parameters that I might want it to include. More robust is better. You're really sketching out a very exhaustive outline for what you want. And I find that if you do it the right way, ChatGPT will give you copy for a press release, for example. That's 90% of the way there. Honestly, it really can do some amazing work if you feed it a really strong prompt. And so I think more information, more guidance is always better. It's like working with any person that you've ever worked with. You want to give them more information to ensure that they're effective and deliver the best result. And the same, goes for these tools.
Actually, there's one thing I would like to piggyback on Chris's comment. So I totally agree with Chris's suggestions on giving the ChatGPT like as much as information possible, as much as context possible, but also the free version of ChatGPT is based on the data limited to 2021. So the data itself is not up to date. So you might not get the latest information out of the ChatGPT free version. So if you really want to get the latest information that is tailored to your context, then you might want to utilize the newer version of a ChatGPT or Bard or Bing's Chat.
So we have a couple more questions, and I think this one's for the agency folks. Would you charge by time or project for using AI? For example, if you were to take 15 minutes with AI to write news release, do you charge just 15 minutes, or do you charge a standard news release time amount? And what are the ethical implications for that?
That's a great question. I'm going to bow out from answering this one only because we charge a flat retainer fee for all of our clients, and we don't track hours in the way that other agencies do, because I hate tracking hours, and so we've banned it from our agency. So I think it's funny because I think that speaks to an issue. Getting the work done faster for some agencies might not be the best result, but generally speaking, for an agency like ours that's more retainer based, it's an awesome way to work. But I'll pass the baton to others.
No, and I'll say I see it disrupting a lot of the agency billing models right now. I mean, the ethical issue is if it takes 15 minutes, you got to bill 15 minutes. If you bill an hour for 15 minutes of time, then you're being unethical, and especially there's legal issues there. But if you want to start charging and go to a whatever price for however you want to do it, there's going to be a lot of experimentation there. You're going to be able to do more things that add more value to your clients. So yes, while you may be billing for 15 minutes to write this, there's another 45 minutes that people can be doing some great things to deliver better value to clients and make you a more attractive agency. And that's why I talk about disclosure. And I know that's one of the things some of my clients ask is, how do you? And that's why we tell them what's going on, and we make sure you bill accurately.
It is interesting. One wonders if clients will recognize that you're using ChatGPT if the billings and the hours track changes. Because if suddenly you're using X amount of time to develop press releases, and suddenly it dramatically drops in the ChatGPT era, it would be fascinating to see if clients start, asking questions.
For the Evas of the world who can set their own rates with new clients and don't have to deal with the complexity of how much to bill out for junior staffers and so on, it's a great opportunity to recognize that you're paid for the value you deliver, not the length of time it takes you to deliver it. 100%. And so I think you can charge more because, as Chris has said a couple of times, I think Mark has said it, the quality of your work, the creativity of it is going to go up because you're not wasting all your brain cells on the grind. The paradigm that I'm trying to get myself into is up until this point, we've been building skyscrapers, and we've been the superintendents and the day laborers. Like we charge money because we have to haul the bricks and put the mortar down and build them. Now we should only be the architect and the inspector. The technology is going to do all the work in between. And if we can come up with the creative, appealing design of the skyscraper, we should be able to charge a lot more than we did when we were doing the day labor.
And the one thing we didn't mention it's concerning me, and I don't have an answer, and I'm still struggling with this too. while we're looking at the tools, we're talking about time efficiency. You know, there are AI tools that are great at doing meeting notes and action items, and you can do it and they can record it and it's out automatically afterwards. The problem is that's usually how a lot of junior staff get trained to do strategic thinking. And we're listening to an hour-long call, and do you highlight, here's the key takeaways, here's the key elements there. And by automating that, are we taking away some of the training opportunity? And that's one at our agency, we're having a lot of discussion around that. And I don't think there's any general consensus there. There's definitely benefits, but you got to look at some of those drawbacks, because we want to make sure we make the next generation of architects, as Michael was talking about, and not folks that are just slaves to the technology.
Mark, as a trainer, I've thought about that. Have the junior staffer do it too, and then let them have the AI generated to compare to.
Exactly.
And then you don't have to do it to have them to compare it to. You should be able to close the feedback loop for training faster and actually train better.
Good point.
100%. And honestly, for younger or for entry-level staffers, these tools are incredibly helpful. I mean, I wish they existed when I was just starting out, because it would allow me to probably, accelerate my career a little bit more if I understand how to use these tools and optimize them for the best outcomes for clients. I mean, I think there's a lot of value in there. It's so funny. I just asked a team member the other day about some work that she had done, and I was like, "Did you use chat for this?" And she was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "That's awesome. It's great." And so I think it just speaks to the fact that it really depends on how you look at it also within an agency. Like I'm a partner at my agency, and I speak I think of these tools very highly, and I could see how it could go the other way if you're in an agency where the higher ups are probably not as accepting of these services or these technologies. But I really do see benefit for for younger team members who are trying to develop these skills and deliver work product that's great. And I see that these tools help in that regard.
So we're going to finish off this discussion with, lightning round again. What do you see as what excites you the most about AI, and what scares you the most, or what are the biggest risks there are that you see with AI and PR? So kind of a benefits risk assessment here. No one wants to jump in.
I'll go first as somebody else is talking. So what excites me the most is just, the amazing potential. We're just at the, Apple II TRS-80 color computer phase right now. I'm dating myself there. It is going to get so much better and so much more interesting. I'm spending a lot of time playing with autonomous agents right now, which if you think AI is something, when you start playing with autonomous agents and what that'll enable us to do, that's a whole different ball of wax. And what terrifies me, and I do not use that word lightly, is I am just so paranoid over what's going to be happening with deep fakes and misinformation, and its weaponization, especially by advocacy groups against organizations and against people. And that one really, because you're playing catch up there, and it's so much easier to do. And we're going to really, I worry that the example I give a lot of people is, one of the reasons that George Floyd was so powerful is the imagery we saw, and we could see like the lack of humanity in the officer's eyes, and it struck home. But now people are going to be able to make 5 or 10 different versions of that, saying, well, here's this and here's that. And are we going to start distrusting the video the same way we know things are airbrushed in magazines or photoshopped in magazines now? There could be a really chilling effect in society here. And that's what I'm working through. Somebody else cheer us up now.
I'll give mine. There are two sides of the same coin, the thing I'm most afraid of and the thing I'm most excited about. Afraid of is as you look around, I've got 4 kids. The youngest is 17. Look at them and their peers. The growth in technology hasn't been good for them. The distraction of having on-demand everything in their hand all the time, the anxiety and depression that research is showing that has grown out of social media. That trend is only going to continue where you have, you think your friends don't listen? Guess what? There's a chat bot that will always say the right things to you. This already exists. You can pay for it. It says always here for you. You train it on how you want it to react to your stuff, and it always gives you the right support. I'm really scared about a lot of people putting on their Apple Vision Pro and essentially never taking it off. At the same time, the benefits are when we recognize that and we we have more time because the technology has freed us up to be more inherently human, to seek out things that propel and accentuate humanity. I've been able to hike more. I do this hike so many times. I never stopped and looked, and it's like, oh, I can see that peak from here. I didn't realize it in this canyon. And I'm trying to take time to recognize that. It does something for my soul. I'm not a psychologist, so I don't know how to explain it. But I think that's a benefit that will come to us if we're looking for it. If we're not, we're just going to keep walking around in a state of semi-hypnosis, distracted by all the digital inputs that we have access to.
Well, thank you so much. I'm excited about where AI is going, not only because I have clients who are using now their business models on AI, but also I think I can use AI as well. So I appreciate all this time. What we plan on doing is after this discussion, we'll send a link to everyone who registered to the recording. We'll also add any kind of other materials that the group has decided to share with us. We've got requests for lists of reference sites and things like that. So we'll gather material and send it to everyone who's registered. And I appreciate your time today and really have a great rest of the week. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
everyone.
Thanks for bringing us together, Eva. Thanks, panelists. That was awesome. Thanks,
Thanks, guys.
audience.
Thanks, everyone.
Look forward to keeping in touch.
Thank you.